How are we doing, folks? Your host Moose here on your home of the Pitt Panthers, the Pitt Panthers Football Network, bringing you your Around the NCAA recap for Week 12. And the Panthers are coming off a big win against North Carolina on Senior Day at Heinz Field, 45-40. They escaped with the victory, held on to win, and because of that, some big recruits have decided that they want to join Panther Nation and come on for hashtag The Pursuit as they try and pursue greatness in ACC and NCAA championships. The first guy is a kicker, Andy Hodges from Radford, Virginia. Panthers fought off Alabama, Texas, Penn State, LSU, some very good competition for a very solid kicker. Doesn't have the strongest leg in the country, but he's very accurate and should be great for the Panthers, obviously with Chris Blewett as a senior. Panthers are going to need a kicker going into next season, and so Andy Hodges is their guy, the number 7 kicker in the country. The Panthers also brought in a 3-star strong safety. They have a couple of safeties leaving as seniors, Terrence Webb, Reggie Mitchell, so they're going to need some safeties coming in. Lonnie Bush from Utica, New York, 6-foot strong safety, number 12 ranked strong safety in the country, fought off Syracuse, BC, a lot of those Northeast type teams. Very quick player. You can see he's got A-rated speed. Decent in coverage, especially in zone, which is what you'll typically see more out of a safety, so that's good. Decent tackler, so he should be a good, solid player for the Panthers. Ryan Henry, a tackle again, another offensive lineman. Adam Bisnawadi's leaving, so the Panthers were able to bring in Henry from Moorhead, Minnesota. A little undersized, so he could definitely get a bit bigger for the Panthers. That's what they'll want. He might redshirt because of that, but the Panthers fought off Illinois, USC, Tennessee to get a very just solid, balanced player, and one that is going to more than likely play a factor for them at some point in his college career. And the fourth recruit, it was a 4-recruit swing, Brandon Bowling from Security Widefield, Colorado. So the Panthers going out west, but they need a DE. There's no doubt about that. They're going to have Juan Price leaving, of course, All-American, and leaving after this season, so bringing in Brandon Bowling, he should be a good rush end, fairly quick, very good power moves, the ability to get through players, decent strength, good agility, good, just good fundamentals, hits very hard, and the Panthers fought off Wyoming and Texas to get his services. So, of course, Pat Narduzzi happy with those. Pitt is it, hashtag Hail to Pitt. So those are the recruits your Panthers brought in because of that 45-40 victory over North Carolina. Additionally, in the ACC last week, Clemson went to 9-1, beating Georgia Tech 24-7. Miami stayed undefeated, going to 10-0, beating Duke 35-14, who the Panthers will play next week. Those are actually the Panthers' next 2 opponents. Boston College beat NC State. Florida State just escaped Syracuse 24-17, and Louisville 28-14 over Wake Forest. In the top 25 recap, of course, we've got some of the ACC games we talked about. Pitt winning, Clemson winning, UCLA upsetting Washington 28-24. I guess you could call it an upset. They were fairly even matched. Washington was the undefeated squad, but UCLA with a huge 17-point unanswered run in the second half shuts down the Huskies and comes away with the victory. And that's going to be a huge matchup. Those teams are on track to face each other in the Pac-12, final as well. Another big upset as we talk about unbeaten teams falling. Number 6, Wisconsin gets obliterated by Nebraska, who took a 31-3 lead into the half and held on for a 48-17 victory. So Wisconsin is undefeated no more. Another battle of the unbeatens. Houston 38-16 over undefeated Navy in Annapolis. So Houston, the Cougars keep pressing on, while unfortunately the midshipmen fall to 8-1 and lose their undefeated status. TCU gets obliterated by Kansas State, who improves to 7-3. Big win for the Wildcats. And then, of course, we can see Oregon State upsetting Arizona State, big 35-12 obliteration of Fraud Graham and the Arizona State Sun Devils in that particular matchup. Alabama, our game of the week, just obliterates Mississippi State 42-14, and Oregon gets to 500 at 5-5 by beating Utah 30-13. So some big games all around the country, seeing some undefeated teams fall. And then because of those games, we'll take a look here at our players of the week. For San Diego State, another player of the week for them, this time on defense, DeMonte Kazee, 2 interceptions and a forced fumble in a win over Hawaii. Tommy Armstrong Jr. for Nebraska, senior quarterback, in their win over Wisconsin. 265 passing, 113 rushing, 6 total touchdowns in that victory, which is an unbelievable performance. Huge win for Nebraska in both the Big Ten as well as in the whole national picture. For the Panthers, we get a player of the week, Quadri Henderson, he's the one we're going to focus on. Deontay Austin, yeah, you had 2 picks. Okay, but Quadri Henderson, 313 kick return yards and 2 kick return touchdowns, 48 punt return yards. I think he had 55, maybe 60 rushing yards, and I think 35 receiving yards. So almost 500 all-purpose yards in one game, which is just absurdity for Quadri Henderson. So individual honors now. J.T. Barrett still leading our Heisman watch. Greg Ward Jr. for undefeated Houston just behind him. Those are your 2 real contenders, I would say, at this point in the season. So after our individual awards, we're of course going to go into the top 25 and how things are shaking out in the NCAA right now. And so as we look into the ACC Coastal Division, there's really 2 teams, Miami and Pitt. Pitt just has to get over one last hurdle in Duke before that epic showdown in Miami and Coral Gables in the final game of the season to see who's going to win the ACC Coastal Division and face Clemson, which would be a rematch for the Panthers to try and duplicate their victory that they had over the Tigers this year and give the Tigers a chance at revenge over the Panthers. So we'll see if that will come to fruition. Around the country, though, the Coaches Bowl, Alabama still number 1, Oklahoma still number 2, but some big shakeups in the rest of the top 10. Miami's up to 3 because Washington has dropped back to 6. Houston's up to 4th with their win over Navy, and of course Navy's now dropped out of the top 10 back to 11 with their loss. UCLA, because of their big win over Washington, leapfrogs a few squads and now is sitting at 7th in the country. So we got teams all over the place. Clemson's up to 8th. Pitt is now up to 9th because of their win over North Carolina and just the fact that they didn't lose compared to a few of the other teams here in the top 10. Michigan is now in the top 10 again, the only 2-loss team in the top 10 after they improved to 8-2 with their win over Maryland. But Navy's back at 11 now after their loss. LSU to 12, Baylor 13, Florida State 14. And really the biggest shock of all is Wisconsin dropped all the way back to 15th in the country because they lost to Nebraska. I mean, I know it's a blowout loss, but they're still only 9-1. So it's just absurd to see them drop that behind a couple of 3-loss teams, which is just, madness to see them drop that far down in the polls. Of course, the big poll that really matters is the BCS poll. And right now, Oklahoma and Alabama would be your national title game, but you have undefeated Miami, Clemson, Pitt, all 1 loss in the ACC, potentially saying something. Undefeated Ohio State, UCLA and Washington, both with 1 loss. All of these teams could have a say at getting into the national title game should one of those unbeaten teams falter. And it is the first week of bowl projections as well, so we can see that currently the Panthers are projected for the Chick-fil-A Bowl against, a fairly decent opponent, but one with a poor record, so I think it'd be an easy matchup for the Panthers. Number 22, Ole Miss, is the projected matchup for Pitt in the Chick-fil-A Bowl because they have them as the 3rd ACC team, with Clemson in the Sugar Bowl, Miami in the Orange Bowl, Fiesta Bowl, Washington and Navy, Rose Bowl, Ohio State, UCLA, okay, and then the BCS National Championship sees Oklahoma taking on Alabama. But things that could shake that up are the games taking place this week. Number 1, Alabama heads to Gainesville to take on Florida. Herb Street sees Alabama coming out on top on this one. Both teams with fantastic defenses. Alabama number 22 in the country, Florida number 3 in the country, but Bama is going to have just enough to get over the top on that one. Number 12, LSU hosts number 17, Texas A&M. Herb Street sees that running game of Fournette and Geis going to be way too much for Texas A&M to handle. Number 2, Oklahoma looking to stay unbeaten as they take on newly ranked Kansas State, who pulled off a big upset over TCU, but he doesn't see that happening yet again. He has Oklahoma coming out with the win. They're number 7 offense, number 5 defense, which is just absurdity how good they've been this year, staying unbeaten. And for your Pitt Panthers, they are going to be heading to Durham, North Carolina to take on the Duke Blue Devils, who've had a very tough season, tough go of it, and that's why Herb Street's picking your Panthers to come away with the win. Number 2 point scoring team in the country, number 7 overall in total offense, 7th best rush offense. Solid rush defense for the Panthers. Thankfully, with their terrible pass defense that they've had this year, they're taking on one of the worst pass offenses in the country and overall one of the worst scoring offenses in the country, one of the worst defenses in the country. Not a lot of redeeming qualities about this Duke team. If you look at their schedule, one of their wins is against a FCS school. Then they lost to Colorado State, Georgia Tech, New Mexico. They beat Troy, and they beat Virginia. So they've beaten nobody, really. They've beaten Virginia, who is actually a worse team than they are, to be honest. And then Troy in an FCS squad, and they've lost every other game this year in fairly convincing fashion. They have a freshman quarterback in Jones, who's actually okay. I'll tell you what, his completion percentage isn't great, but he's been relatively safe with the ball. 8 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. receptions. They got Duncan, who's at 75 yards a game rushing. So nobody spectacular that's going to scare the Panthers, but guys to build on for the future. And you can see just looking overall at their team, when your best player is an 86 and the Panthers have at least double-digit players better than that in their lineup, at least double digits, if not, even higher numbers into the teens and what have you, you know that it's not going to be a close effort. And because of that, we see the Panthers going into Duke and come away with a 45-18 victory over the Blue Devils, who just, they're going to put up a little fight, I think, to begin with, maybe keep it close, but the Panthers are just going to have way too much and overcome them in the second half, like they've done to a lot of teams this year, to be honest. Made some adjustments at halftime and come away with victory. So we see the Panthers cruising in this one 45-18 and setting up a fantastic matchup with Miami, who plays Virginia this week, so they should come away with a win. It should be 11-0 Miami hosting the 10-1 Pitt Panthers for the right to play in the ACC title game and potentially, who knows, a national championship game. So as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Let us know what you